This is Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore from DefendingUtah.org, and we are back on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, K-Talk.com with the Liberty Line Naked Truth segment, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. Sponsored by Patriot Mobile. Join our grassroots network to get our updates and alerts. Just go to LibertyLineup.com. That's LibertyLineup.com and sign up. And if you like what you're hearing, support Liberty with a donation of any amount. That's LibertyLineup.com. You can also like and share our Facebook page, the Liberty Lineup Radio Show. Before we went to the break, we were talking with Tara Tenney, the daughter of assassinated rancher and protester Lavoy Finicum. And that interview will be up on our Defending Utah YouTube channel. We'll be posting that on both the Liberty Lineup and Defending Utah Facebook pages, and so you can listen to that again if you missed it, or you can share it with others so that they can hear more about who Lavoy really was. I think that's an important thing that we need to be looking at, is who he was, and not just the media narrative about what was going on, but what the actual facts were. For several decades, and he's witnessed a lot of miracles happening in the legislature in his efforts to defend the Constitution. And there's a couple of bills coming up, one a really good one along these lines and one a really bad one. We've got HJR8 that calls for a convention of states that would literally give the federal government more power. It would legitimize all of the horrible things that they're doing and give them more power to do even more horrible things. And then we've got another a good bill, HJR16, that would rescind last year's call for a convention. And so it's important that we get...
And all calls. It would rescind all calls for conventions.
That Utah's ever had, so there's something we forgot about. We make sure that one's repealed. But we've got Don Fatheringham on the line. Thank you for joining us, Don.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Can you give us a little more background about yourself and let people know who you are?
Okay. I'm an old guy. I'm a veteran of World War II, and after the war, I discovered people were messing with the Constitution. Everyone in the Marine Corps, of course, was required to take an oath, not only to defend it, but even to die for it. So I felt pretty strong about anybody messing around with that document.
Yeah. And
so I've been following it for many years, and I guess it was in about the mid-1980s, about 1984, 85, I discovered the applications from 32 of the necessary 34 states, and I was mortified. I thought we're only 2 states away from a convention. And so, fortunately, I had a group to work with in Washington called Citizens to Protect the Constitution. And they had kept tabs on pending legislation in the states. And so they told me where I needed to go. So I started running all over the United States, testifying against these things with a lot of success. The legislators had been lied to, and they'd been led to believe that an Article 5 convention would be the solution to most of our problems, and I saw it as just the opposite.
And you were able to have a lot of success with that, and I think the providential successes that you had, the things that really show that we were on God's side on this issue. I'd like you to share some of those. I know some of them.
Okay, I'll tell you, Enoch, it was one after the other. In the first place, I would, when you buy an airline ticket over the counter for the next day, it's not cheap. And I was flying all over the United States, not knowing exactly what I was going to run into. And in almost every instance, some miracle occurred that was beyond my ability to I could never have created the situations that developed. So after several months of this testifying in the States and I guess you'd say battling the powers and principalities, I discovered that I'm not alone. I knew I was not alone. God loves America, and he loves the Constitution. And
in Utah, you had an experience where some microphones weren't working at just the right time. Can you talk to us about that?
Well, there were so many. I'm not sure which state you're talking about. But
Wasn't there one with Orrin Hatch where he wanted to speak about it?
Okay, that was a special session in the Utah legislature. We had in I believe it was about 91 or 92, a man in our legislature by the name of Reese Hunter. He was a delegate from the Holiday area, or a representative, I should say, and he had a rescission bill to rescind Utah's 1979 application for a constitutional convention. And he had gained quite a bit of support in the House. And so just before voting on it, the Speaker of the House said, well, we're not going to vote today because Senator Hatch has heard what we're voting on, and he wants to come out here and speak to you before you vote on it. So Hunter wrote us and said, well, Mr. Speaker, if Mr. Hatch is going to be here, don't you think we'd have someone to speak on the other side of the issue? And so that was me. So I had to debate Hatch before the full Utah House. And when I arrived there, he was coming out of the little anteroom right off the chamber there with legislators, and they're all holding a little yellow piece of paper. And each one had his own slip. But I didn't figure it out till the debate started. He had written down questions for them to ask me from the floor. And as it turned out, the debate was very well organized. They had a time clock and a timer, and it was strictly regulated. And immediately I saw the difficulty of framing the issue, framing the questions I wanted brought up. Well, here's Providence. Every question that Hatch had written down and handed these guys were exactly the issues I wanted brought up. And so he saved my debate time. I didn't have to create a situation in order to tell them what they needed to know. Hatch did it for me. So.
Wow. So, and that should tell people a lot about it, is because of who is supporting the convention. When you actually look at it, it's all of the big government Republicans, and then, of course, George Soros and his wolf pack. But the people like in our legislature, you've got Wayne Niederhauser, who is totally anti-liberty, pro-big government, and then you've got Orrin Hatch, who everybody knows is pro-big government, anti-liberty. These are the people that are promoting a convention.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ironic, really. Especially for a state like Utah, we know more about the Constitution than most people know. We know that it didn't just happen. We know that the men were raised up for that purpose. And so it kind of amazes me to think that anyone in Utah, especially with the background and culture we have here, that they would even consider tampering with the Constitution.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that you talked about, these miracles that have happened, and that miracle that happened when Utah was able to rescind some of their previous calls for convention. Last year, unfortunately, after it seems like a tactic that's used a lot, is they'll throw a lot of different bills that do the same thing at the wall, and hopefully one of them will stick. And last year there was 3 calls for a convention. One of them passed, and so there's a legislator from up north that has introduced HJR16 that would rescind that call and any other calls we might have.
That was Ed Red.
Ed Red from the Logan area. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. He attended a meeting that I was speaking at over in Smithfield, and he became interested in the issue because I was talking about my trotting around the country with this convention business, and he wanted to do something, but he was reticent because he said, all these guys are my friends. He said, these aren't the bad guys in the legislature.
I disagree with him, but
well, okay,
a lot of them are the bad guys.
Well, it may be, and I don't really know. I don't have any way to assess motives. I don't really know what their motives are, and perhaps if I'd watched them more closely, I would know. But Ed Red was very courageous in introducing HJR16.
Yes, because he's going against like the popular consensus amongst.
He's going against the current, and he's still a little bit wary, and he needs our support. He needs to hear from his constituents and people around the state admiring what he's doing, and it would also help if he had a few co-sponsors on that bill.
Definitely, that's HJR16.
So Ed Red, he's definitely doing the right thing. And if you are, what's his district? What area? It's Ogden or
I don't know. Somewhere in I think Davis County, in that area somewhere.
Okay.
I don't really know what.
Maybe we can look up his number and encourage people to call his office and encourage him if you're his constituent. But we definitely want to encourage him because he is doing the right thing. He's doing the same thing that preceded the miracle way back in the time you just spoke of, right? What was this, however many decades ago that was, and we need it again. Where's
District 4 up in Logan?
Okay, so District 4 up in Logan. If you're in Logan, call the office of...
anybody should call him, but especially if you're constituent, call the office of Ed Red.
You want to read off the number of his office there?
And so his cell phone is 435-760-3177. That's Representative Ed Red, 435-760-3177. And if you go to le.utah.gov, you can find out who your legislator is and urge them to support that HJR16.
Because we are looking for another miracle again. But we do have one question. When you think about that we have both a call for CONCON and a repeal of CONCON in the exact same session. So do you know, and you may not know this, but do we have to be concerned about the timing? If we pass the repeal and then the HJR8 passes a day later, we have to repeal again?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't know about the HJR8 until I was in Annapolis last week testifying in the Maryland legislature on this, and that was exactly the time that HJR8 was passed. I can't be everywhere at once.
Well, HJR8 passed in committee, which was weird last week, or was it earlier this week? I think it was last Friday.
It was Friday.
And it passed with a less than a majority of the committee members voting for it, which just seems wrong to me because you had more than half of them either voting no or not voting at all. And so for a bill to pass with less than the majority just seems wrong. But also it's going to be voted on by the floor of the House tomorrow, I hear. And so it's really important for all of our listeners to get emails and phone calls out to friends and family to let people know to oppose HJR8, which calls for the convention, which would increase and legitimize everything that the government's doing, and it would open up to all of the dangerous changes that we've been warned about. We've just got one more.
That's really good advice. I hope many citizens of Utah will act on that immediately.
Yes. We've got one more minute. We want to thank you for coming on. Where can people go to learn more about what you've written on this topic and what they can do about it?
There is a website, freedomfirstsociety.org.
Okay.
You can go to that website and click on articles, and my name will come up with things like the sovereignty factor, the sovereignty dynamic, which is what this Constitutional Convention is all about. And when people understand that, they'll realize that you can't. In 1787, we had righteous men with sovereign power. This time, we will have unrighteous men with sovereign power.
We don't. Thank you, Don Fatheringham, for coming on and talking about this. Thanks to our sponsor, Patriot Mobile, where your monthly bill goes to support this show and conservative causes and candidates of your choice. Go to patriotmobile.com for more information. We'll be right back talking about BYU supporting Bernie Sanders.